really long and kind of boring, so I don't know this one, so I'm curious to see what else is in here. So I think am I going the wrong way? I don't know. Alright, so goodness, I just made you shake all over the place, didn't I? This says it is a view inside the jail cell that held Jeffrey Dahmer between court sessions. I went to watch the Netflix series with the guy from American Horror Story, and you guys, I had to turn it off. Like, when he started talking about eating the guy's heart, I was like, and I'm done. I'm done here, I'm done. I'm trying to get this Clare off the magazine here. Okay. So this magazine has 5 parts, and I thought that I would do 1 part each video for Patreon, and then put it in 1 long video for the channel, because you guys really seemed to like that. This video doesn't have a picture doesn't have a caption on it. So when I saw this, I thought, oh no, because I bought this while the trial was still going on. This is about the Murdaugh family, and if you'd followed that trial, he is now in jail. Spoiler alert. So it says, killers in the family. Husband, father, killer. More than a year after finding his wife and son shot dead at the family hunting lodge, Alex Murdaugh was exposed for allegedly stealing millions from legal clients. And now police have also charged him as the cold-blooded gunman. So this is his family. It says, it's an undated photo. Buster, Maggie, and Paul. On June 7th, 2021, Alex Murdaugh knew his wife Maggie, by then living on her own at the family beach house, was quietly interviewing divorce attorneys. Alex, the wealthy and powerful son of a family that has dominated the legal system of South Carolina's Low Country for a century, also knew Maggie had a soft spot for his ailing father, Randolph. So on that summer evening, when Alex told Maggie his father was dying, he knew she would hasten to his bedside. But Alex wouldn't say which hospital, instead persuading Maggie to meet first at Moselle, their hunting estate, and then follow him from there. En route, Maggie texted a friend. "It's fishy," she wrote. "He's up to something, but I don't know what." Sorry, I had to make sure my laptop was muted. After pulling into the secluded 1,770-acre property where she, Alex, and their 2 sons, Buster and Paul, celebrated many a holiday and weekend hunt over her 27-year marriage, Maggie, aged 52, left her car running as she got out to say a quick hello to the man who, she confided to her girlfriends, made her miserable. Says one Aimee, she was looking forward to a future without Alex. charges in alleged schemes to steal more than $8 million from clients, insurance companies, and his family's law firm. The pile of alleged crimes, Alex says he's generally innocent, citing a decades-long opioid addiction for lapses in judgment, including his own botched staged murder last September. I'm going to come back to talk about these photos. To leave his surviving son, Buster, with a $10 million life insurance payout. We are seeing, says one of his former law partners, that he is the worst of the worst. A South Carolina resident in the Murdaugh's social circle marvels. How could he have done something like this? Dark and demented, don't even begin to explain it. It was Alex, gasping and in a high-pitched wail, who called 911 that night to say he'd come home to find Maggie and Paul shot. Neither one of them is moving. Please hurry. It's bad, Alex cried to the emergency dispatcher. The next morning, something immediately felt off when the Colleton County Sheriff's Office curiously assured terrified locals that there was no danger to the public, says a South Carolina resident. You don't make that kind of carte blanche announcement unless you already have a very good idea of who did it. And what looked to many like foot dragging by sled in the months that followed now appears to be a smart strategy. They had to dot every I and cross every T because of the Murdaugh's political connections. In the meantime, what was left of Alex's world unraveled. In September 2021, the law firm that his great-grandfather founded in 1910 accused Alex of embezzling millions of dollars. They forced him out and filed suit. We were stabbed in the back, says a former partner in the firm, which has since dropped the Murdaugh name, recalling how Alex's coworkers rallied around him and Buster after Maggie and Paul's deaths. We tried to be good friends to Alex and he stole our money and gave us the finger. As investigators dug into the murder case, they also began re-examining a string of other deaths associated with the Murdaugh name, which we'll talk about in a minute because it's in a timeline. Paul, at the time of his murder, was awaiting trial on felony charges in a 2019 drunk boating crash that killed his friend Mallory Beach, age 19. But there was also the case of Stephen Smith, a 19-year-old nursing student found dead in the middle of a dark Hampton County road in 2015. Smith's death was initially invested as a homicide, with the Murdaugh name coming up with the Smiths' family and friends before it was ultimately ruled a hit and run, not a one, like a hole in one. SLED reopened the case in June of 2021, and then there was the case of Gloria Satterfield, the Murdaugh's longtime housekeeper. She died in 2018 at age 57 after falling down a steep brick staircase at their home. Ruled a trip and fall at the time, that case was also reopened by SLED. Press accounts of this development mentioned a $500,000 wrongful death settlement from insurance companies, which was news to Satterfield's sons. They sued, alleging that Alex kept the money for himself, and so began a cascade of other alleged financial crimes coming to light. Attorney and state legislative representative Justin Bamberg represents 10 former personal injury clients, whom he says Alex cheated out of millions in settlement money. In one case, Bamberg says Alex kept $100,000 due to a client by recording it as the fee for an expert witness who was never actually hired. These are hardworking people, regular country folk. They're not greedy, Bamberg says. Alex was hugging mamas as he stole out of their back pockets. Even before Maggie had the chance to hire a divorce lawyer who would surely discover these crimes while digging through the couple's accounts, she knew Alex was a liar. He was overbearing and dishonest with her, says Perrin. He made her miserable. Maggie had moved to the family's Estacito Island, South Carolina beach house in February of 2021, 4 months before she was murdered. was finally time. As the investigation into her murder closed in on Alex, he kept up appearances as not only the dutiful, grieving husband and dad, but also still a power player. In recorded phone calls from the Richland County Jail, Alex made sure Christmas and Valentine's flowers were placed at Maggie and Paul's graves. He griped to Maggie's sister Liz about his $7 million bond. "The thing about how rich we are, I wish it was half true," he told her. And then he micromanaged a push by a well-connected lawyer pal, charging Alex $60,000 to get Buster back into the University of South Carolina Law School after he was kicked out for alleged plagiarism last fall. How easily he discusses how they buy their way in and out of things, sniffs the South Carolina resident. Sympathy for the once feared, once revered Alex is long gone. Over at the law firm that once bore the Murdaugh name, his indictments for murder were met with cheers and high fives. "You reap what you sow," says his former partner. "He can rot in jail." So I do think they are reinvestigating the boy maid. Was she a maid? I think they're reinvestigating, yes, Gloria Satterfield, the housekeeper, and they're reinvestigating Stephen Smith. So I hope that more charges are brought against him, because I think that there is absolutely no way he is innocent. My stomach is growling and I have no idea why. Oh, there's Stephen Smith. It says a cross marks where Stephen Smith was found in 2015. This is Gloria's headstone. This is Mallory Beach. This is Maggie and Paul. This is the stage shooting. Alex said a stranger shot him in the head. But allegedly, Alex hired a friend to fire the shot for the insurance money. The law firm is here, and here he is after being busted. So this is, they're calling it the killing field, which just makes me so sad. A source on the case says Paul was likely shot first, and then Maggie as she tried to flee. I can't imagine watching your husband shoot your child. I believe that my dog is trying to get upstairs. You may have heard that. The Esposito Beach House is for sale, it says. Or no, it just sold. Okay. So the next case is the body in the backyard. I don't think I know this one. Oh my goodness. Just reading this caption is horrifying. Michael Shaver beamed whenever he talked about his 4-year-old son and 6-year-old daughter. After Michael had kids, that's all that he talked about, says Michael's former coworker and friend Michelle Rippey. They were his biggest priority. Michael loved playing horseshoes with them and tending to the rabbit hutches he built for them in the backyard. He gave up his career as a commercial pilot because it took him away from home too much, and took a job as a mechanic fixing the monorail at Disney World. And friends say it was for his kids' sake that he stayed in a marriage to their mom and his high school sweetheart Lori. But it had long been rocky. He was desperately trying to make Lori happy, recalls Wilma Nicholas, the Savers' next-door neighbor, in Claremont, Florida. Michael was working hard building her a barn. He was even digging a hole in the back to make her a duck pond. And what Michael didn't know is that he was literally digging his own grave. Oh my goodness. On March 9th, 2018, about a month after police say Lori turned them away for attempting to conduct a welfare check requested by a friend of Michael's, the Lake County Sheriff's Office searched the Savers' 5-acre property and found Michael's skeletal remains in the backyard, buried 3 feet beneath a concrete slab, which had been poured over the unfinished duck pond. That's horrible. Police say Michael, age 33, was shot once in the She's right here. She pled not guilty, and she is free on bond awaiting trial. Police allege Lori killed Michael in November 2015 and told friends and family he disappeared, abandoning her and the kids. On December 31st, 2016, she married a man named Travis Filmer in the backyard of the family home, just feet from where Michael was found buried, and where police noted Lori and Travis's names were etched into the concrete. The wedding ceremony, and then later hearing that she was just walking right over the top of them. I mean, that's just something else, says Nicholas. More shocking yet, friends say, is how she let Michael's kids believe he had abandoned them. That's the worst part, that the kids have lived half their lives now thinking that he left. He would never do that. No one disputes that the Savers' marriage was troubled. Michael was arrested in 2014 for a simple domestic battery after a confrontation in which Lori allegedly struck him over the head with a gun, a .38 caliber handgun. But police arrested him for allegedly pulling the weapon out first. Now, Michael would often go quiet for extended periods when he and Lori had a fight, which is one reason his friends were not alarmed when he disappeared in 2015. When things were bad with her, which they were a lot, he did withdraw. Another reason no one reported Michael missing for so long, police say after he was gone, friends and relatives continued getting messages from his Facebook account, which was updated on occasion. Weeks after his death, the authorities allege Lori started selling his guns and giving away his expensive aeronautic tools. My son asked Lori to borrow some kind of tool, and she opened the shed, Nicholas says. He says, "Are you sure Mike doesn't mind if I borrow this?" And she says, "Oh, he's not gonna care. He's never going to be back." Jeffrey Wiggs, Lori's attorney, tells People the state's evidence is largely circumstantial, and says his client is not only innocent, but also an abused woman. What? Noting his 2014 arrest, Lori wouldn't talk to People, but in March 2021, declared her innocence in an online fundraising video. "I'm not guilty," she insists, adding that she is a servant of God, who would never cause any harm to the father of her children. But Michael's friends aren't so sure. For one thing, they never got divorced, so her marriage to Filmer, with whom she now has 2 more children, in 2016 is strange. When I learned that Mike was dead, I thought, she actually did it, says Nicholas. I was mad at myself because I didn't encourage him enough to leave her. But with the kids always foremost in his mind, he might not have listened. He would always be the first one to help someone in need, says Michael's sister Stacy. I think of all the memories I have of him and how much I wish he were still here. That's just horrible. I'm so sorry that my stomach is so grumbly. Alright, so this one, I don't know this one either. So we're gonna go till page 20, I think. Yes, okay. Slain on safari. The wealthy American couple visiting Africa were no strangers to guns and big game hunting. Over their 34-year marriage, Larry and Bianca Rudolph, separately and together, stalked pumas in Canada. Ibex, I don't know what that is. It's in Spain, and bush bucks, a type of wild antelope in Zimbabwe. But in 2016, at a remote safari camp in Kafu National Park in Zambia, where Bianca was hoping to bag a leopard, her 12-gauge shotgun went off in the early morning hours of October 11th. The blast hit the 56-year-old mother of 2 in the heart, killing her. Larry said he was in the bathroom while his wife was packing her weapon into the travel case when the gun fired. house where Larry and Millie Ron died in 2020, testified he had heard in an explosive argument between the pair, during which Larry blurted, "I killed my effing wife for you." Now, Larry's lawyers argued that Loveless had misheard the defendant, but the jurors voted to convict. Larry and Millie Ron both plan to appeal their verdicts, and they are scheduled for sentencing in February 2023. I'll have to look and see how that one turned out. For Sherry Haug, a dental assistant who worked for Larry and knew the family, that day can't come soon enough. It was just about greed and money and power. When Bianca died, we were told not to say anything. No cards, no flowers, nothing. We can finally talk about her moving on. That's so sad. He definitely killed her. Goodness, I am so grumbly in the tumbly. I don't even know why. Alright, let's see. Okay. My mother made me kill her abuser. Oh gosh. In news footage now more than 3 decades old, a little girl is staring at the living room floor in her ramshackle West Virginia home. The very spot where just hours earlier, on February 24th, 1987, she had fatally shot her stepfather, Wayne Wires. When asked by a local reporter on camera why she did it, 11-year-old Mary Elizabeth Bailey, her flame red hair tucked behind her ears, nods towards an easy chair out of view. Wayne, he beat up my mom. He got drunk and he passed out in the chair. And she pauses and shifts uneasily. I shot him. In that uncomfortable pause, Mary Bailey held a secret. I did exactly what my mother asked me to do, she says now, but she did not take the blame. I thought I was doing the right thing. The murder that winter's night in the foothills of the Appalachians sent her mother Priscilla to prison for a decade, and Bailey into foster care. Now grown, Bailey, age 47, has made peace with her past and forgiven her mother. I live with the memory, but I have a good life now. I'm happy, I'm not angry, but I do remember where I came from. Born just after her mother Priscilla turned 17, her father was an older married man not involved in their lives. Bailey grew up in rural West Virginia, in sheer poverty, she said. There was never enough food. I was very, very thin. She carried her books to school in a black trash bag because she didn't have a backpack and rarely had money to buy lunch at school. Kids made fun of me all the time. It was awful. And worse still was life at home with her stepfather, whom Priscilla had married when Bailey was 4. A heavy drinker, Wires would hurl belts and insults at Bailey and her 3 younger half-siblings. He called me a red-headed bee so often I don't think he knew my name, she says. Virginia, where Bailey had been in nursing school. But after about a year, their relationship splintered. More than 20 years went by before they saw each other again, reuniting in 2021. By then, Bailey, who lives with her husband in Gastonia, North Carolina, and owns a medical uniform business, had written a memoir called My Mother's Soldier. The process of writing the book helped me heal, Bailey says. The Priscilla with whom she reconciled was not the person I used to know, and that makes my heart feel good. The two forged a new bond before Priscilla's death in August of 2022. That's sad. I still struggle with what she did, but I understand why she did it, says Bailey, and I forgive her. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please join me again for next week's From Real Life to TV. Bye. Hey guys, welcome back for part 2 of our magazine reading video of the special edition People's True Crime Stories. I am really kind of messing up these magazine readings. The last video was backwards. In my defense, I didn't realize it. I don't usually watch the screen as I film, and Sean will kindly fix it before I put this in one long video. But we are on part 2, like I said. I'm sorry it is not the Ballo case. That will be coming. I have to research it and get as much information as I can, so that will probably be next week's video before we move on to part 3 of this magazine. I'm just gonna scooch you a little. Sorry if that was loud. Alright, so you can see Mr. Dahmer here. Did you guys watch the Netflix series that they did? Like I said in the last video, I could not. Once he started talking about eating that guy's heart, I was like, and I'm out. And I have definitely reported on some pretty nasty stuff, but yeah, couldn't do it. I still think Joseph Morgan should have played Dahmer. I don't know, he just looks so much like him. When I see a picture of Jeffrey Dahmer, I have to make sure that it is not Joseph Morgan from The Vampire Diaries. Just so similar. So I did not actually know all of the names of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims because I have never ever researched that entire case. And I don't know. I know Letty, my good friend Letty at the Mystery Theory, did, I think, a 2-part series on Jeffrey. And I believe that I think Haylee covered it as well. Haylee, you'll have to tell me if you did or not. But I don't remember people talking about all of the different victims. I remember some of them. Obviously his first, Stephen Hicks, and I remember the guy who got him caught. I feel like the gain is really, really high on this video. her story. I just couldn't. The dramatization starring X-Men's Evan Peters. To see sidebar. I don't see Evan Peters on the... Okay, well. Sparked a worldwide renewal of interests in the facts of this case. Those facts are the stuff of nightmares. It was in Dahmer's bedroom, police told Schwartz, that Mueller had discovered a stash of Polaroid photos in an open dresser drawer. They were snapshots of mutilated and dismembered corpses. Realizing that the carnage had been staged in that very room, Mueller shouted to his partner to handcuff Dahmer, who, up until that moment, had been sitting quietly on the living room sofa. And he leapt to his feet, screaming like a terrified animal. After Dahmer was subdued and placed under arrest, Mueller stepped into the kitchen area, opened the fridge, and saw something out of a horror movie on the bottom shelf, next to an open box of baking soda. Mueller slammed the door shut and shouted, "Bob, there's an effing head in the refrigerator." Over the course of the next 6 weeks, Dahmer confessed and described in detail how he had murdered 17 young men, most of them people of color, whom he'd met in gay bars or other LGBT spaces. He'd had sex with their corpses and dismembered them, and in many cases saved their body parts because he wanted to keep them nearby. Killing wasn't the objective, he told Dateline. I wanted to have the person under my complete control to do with as I wanted. When Dahmer told detectives he'd stored a human head in his freezer to eat later, it conjured up comparisons to Hannibal, the cannibal Lecter. The suave epicure of The Silence of the Lambs, released 5 months before Dahmer's arrest. He became a source of popcorn entertainment and what people call a celebrity monster in popular culture, just like Hannibal Lecter. Jeffrey was quickly dubbed the Milwaukee Cannibal. Dahmer had in fact admitted to a single instance of eating a cooked body part because he wanted to try it. Public fascination and revulsion spawned many books, horror movies, reenactment documentaries, and even a stage play. was his 19-year-old lover who'd had too much to drink. The two officers then escorted both upstairs to the apartment 213, where later that night Dahmer killed him. 2 months later, when Dahmer was arrested, the heads of his 3 final victims were found in his refrigerator. Why do you keep their heads, Jeffrey? Oh. Before his trial convened on January 13th, 1992, Dahmer's lawyer, Gerald Boyle, entered a plea of guilty but insane for the 15 murders he had been charged with. Dahmer was never charged in Stephen Toomey's death because he had destroyed all traces of his victim. He would later plead guilty to the 1978 murders of hitchhiker Stephen Hicks in Ohio. Boyle claimed Dahmer had suffered a compulsive sexual disorder over which he had no control. You're stretching. Prosecutor Michael McCann argued Dahmer was a calculating criminal and had, like all serial killers, carefully planned and carried out his murders to avoid detection and continue killing. On Valentine's Day 1992, the case went to jury. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jurors returned a verdict of guilty and sane on all 15 counts. I have seen their tears, Dahmer said in an apology to victims' families as he read a statement to the court before he was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms without the chance of parole. And if I could give my life right now to bring their loved ones back, I would do it. No, you wouldn't. Was he truly remorseful? Reporter Ann Schwartz recounted a 2021 conversation a 2021 conversation she had with Detective Dennis Murphy, one of the officers who took Dahmer's confession, who later visited him in prison. Murphy asked Dahmer, he said, whether if he were released that day, would he resume where he left off at the time of his arrest? He sat back and looked at me and said, yes. He said his desire never went away. I thought it was strange because he said he had found the Lord and been baptized, and I said even after that, and he said yes. About a year was. But that was only the beginning, as the case exploded into a bizarre tale of murder, greed, and deception. Russ, now 52, was acquitted in a subsequent retrial, and suspicions shifted to Betsy's best friend, Pamela Hupp. A fellow mom of 2, Hupp was the last known person to see Betsy alive, and the beneficiary of her $150,000 life insurance policy. In 2016, Hupp pled guilty to fatally shooting a man, police say, after staging an attack to make it look as if Russ had hired a hitman to kill her. That shooting prompted police to take a second look at the 2013 of Hupp's mother. In a fall from a balcony previously ruled an accident. The story captured national attention. Dateline covered it in multiple episodes, and it is the subject of a 6-episode drama series called The Thing About Pam. Yes, starring Renee Zellweger as Hupp. The series available on Peacock. Okay, I was wrong about the platform. NBC's streaming platform premiered in March of 2022. In July of 2021, Lincoln County prosecutor Mike Wood charged Hupp with killing Betsy, saying her actions showed a level of depravity not regularly seen. Already in prison for the 2016 murder, Hupp pled not guilty to the new charges. Prosecutors said he would seek the death penalty. You feel like you know her, and you believe that you recognize her, says Zellweger. When someone like that might not be who they present themselves to be, it is shocking. It makes us renegotiate all the things we thought we knew. Like I said, this case is twisty, and if you really want me to cover it, I can research it and do that, but I don't know. It was just, I don't know, the writing was so dry, I guess. Eyewitnesses, surveillance video, and timed stamped receipts from a fast food restaurant gave Russ an alibi for the hours that Betsy was home alone. No blood was located on Russ or his clothes, and no signs of cleanup at the scene were found, says Joel Swartz, Russ's defense attorney, and the co-author of... I can't even see that. Why do they make it italicized? Bone Deep, Untangling the Betsy Faria murder case. Seriously. Italicized. Sheesh. Still, authorities pressed forward to prove that Russ was Betsy's killer. There was never anything brought to me that suggested anyone else was guilty, says former Lincoln County prosecutor Leah Cheney, who won the verdict against Russ. Russ's initial reaction to finding Betsy, that she'd taken her own life, was a reasonable fear. Betsy had struggled with depression and talked about suicide. A 2010 breast cancer diagnosis was a devastating blow. She was given 3 to 5 years to live. Meanwhile, the Farias' 11-year marriage had included mutual infidelities as well as separations. Still, through church, counseling, and new friends, they were doing better than they ever had been, said Russ, who now works in a motorcycle service shop. The fact that the couple took a Caribbean cruise the month before Betsy's murder, and a friend joined their trip, said it seemed like they were honeymooning. Hupp painted Russ hours of interviews and testimony to play Pam, who told police that Betsy feared her husband Russ. Here's Betsy right here. This next case I know is on Hulu, and I know that several people have covered it. I know Nicole covered it. I think Haylee covered it too. So I have not covered it, and I actually don't know all of the details. It looks like we've got a couple more here. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Fatal friendship. It says they were as close as sisters. Two homemakers in their late 20s, Candy Montgomery and Betty Gore, met while singing in the choir at the First United Methodist Church in Lucas, Texas. The two hit it off and were soon sharing their most intimate secrets, except for one. In 1978, Candy became attracted to Betty's husband, Alan, and began an extramarital affair with him that few saw coming. It was the 70s, and you just didn't think about infidelity that much, said Betty's older brother, Ron. But when Betty eventually grew suspicious and confronted Candy about the betrayal on June 13th, 1980, the consequences were deadly. A neighbor later found Betty, 29, lying in a pool of blood on her utility room floor, bludgeoned 41 times with an axe. As former Colleen County Sheriff's Deputy Steve Ball recalls, it looked like a scene from a horror film. It was Friday the 13th. Our thought was we had a copycat of the movie The Shining, he says. Authorities soon realized that the killer was no movie psychopath, but rather Candy, then age 30, who admitted to the savage attack but said she was acting in self-defense. After an 8-day trial, a jury agreed, acquitting Candy of all charges. When they read the verdict, the whole courtroom just erupted in a roar, says Betty's younger brother, Richard Pomeroy. No one could believe was physically exhausted. It sounds like a bad movie, says defense lawyer Robert Udashin, but she was acting in self-defense. After the acquittal, Candy and Pat moved to Georgia and divorced. She now works as a therapist specializing in anxiety and depression. She has long declined to talk about the case. Meanwhile, Betty's daughters, Elissa and Bethany, who were just 5 and 11 months when she was killed, are now both mothers themselves and have professional careers. Betty's family still thinks of her every day, says brother Richard. She should be getting old now. A grandmother. This shouldn't have happened. Betty didn't deserve it. Crazy. What made a beloved doctor kill? When Dr. Benjamin Gilmer began his first job as a family physician at a tiny clinic in rural Cane Creek, North Carolina, in 2009, he knew the position would be complicated by 2 factors. The doctor he was replacing had the same last name and was now serving a life sentence for murdering his own father. At first, Benjamin Gilmer figured the name coincidence would be a mere curiosity at the office, to be moved past with a quick explanation that he and his predecessor were not related. But something about that odd connection opened a door for his patients, who began telling story after story about how much Dr. Vince Gilmer had meant to them, and how shocked they were by what he had done. It was clear what happened with their doctor was something they didn't understand, Benjamin says. Nicknamed Bear for his giant hugs, Vince Gilmer had been friends to everyone. A doctor who'd come in early and stay late so his patients didn't have to miss work for an appointment. He cheered in the stands for the middle school baseball games, even though he didn't have children of his own. Their stories touched me, said Benjamin. He cared about his patients, and there was this weird dissonance. How could their Dr. Vince be the same man who'd strangled his 60-year-old father with a rope, cut off all of his fingers with pruning shears, and left his body on the side of the road in Virginia one June night in 2004? What? The question gnawed at him. I couldn't let it go, and he didn't. Over the next decade, he came to solve the medical mystery behind Vince Gilmer's crime, and in January 2022, successfully helped him secure a pardon. He also became Vince's closest friend. He's part of our family, says Benjamin, whose book about the murder, their relationship, and his quest for answers, The Other Dr. Gilmer, was published in March of 2022. Vince is such a great and terrible example of the failure of our justice system. He forced me to think about how we need to treat people who are mentally ill rather than imprison them. Not long after he started work at the Cane Creek Family Health Center, Benjamin began discovering clues as to what may have happened the night Vince killed his father. In the months prior, he'd learned Vince's behavior had become erratic. He ran his truck into a telephone pole, flipped it over, and gave himself a concussion. He and his wife had suddenly divorced. He had begun drinking heavily. I'm trying not to squeak the pages here. Vince had also abruptly stopped taking his antidepressant medicine, a move that caused anxiety and irritability. I started to understand his brain was inflicted by these different wounds, Benjamin says. In 2012, Benjamin got a call from Sarah Koenig with the radio program This American Life, who wanted to do an episode about the perplexing murder case. She encouraged him to write prosecutor, the judge, and the jury believed Vince was this manipulative person that committed a premeditated murder, Benjamin says. But in my encounter, it was very clear that he was sick or sociopathic. He called a psychiatrist friend to join him on another prison visit, where the men noticed Vince's awkward gait. The friend asked, "Do you think he has Huntington's?" says Benjamin. "A bomb went off in my head. A genetic neurodegenerative disease. Huntington's affects movement as well as frontal lobe function, like impulse control, and it can lead to psychosis and violent outbursts." Vince's symptoms ticked every box. Benjamin pushed to get him tested for the disease, which has no cure. His test came back positive, and he was finally put on medication to treat his symptoms. It was cathartic for him to understand why his brain was not working right, Benjamin said. It also helped him come to terms with the abuse he had endured from his father, an Army veteran whose erratic behavior indicated he also likely had Huntington's, an inherited disease. And Vince has said, "Mom, I hope God can forgive me, and I pray I get the chance to tell Dad I understand that his mind was broken." With that final piece of the puzzle in place, Benjamin began focusing on getting Vince out of prison and into a treatment facility. He and a team of lawyers applied for clemency. Benjamin and his wife Deidre and their teenage children Kai and Luya started becoming very close to Vince, he says, making the 2-hour drive from their home in Asheville to spend Thanksgiving with him in prison. They call him Dr. Vince, he says, of the kids whose drawings have decorated his cell. They know what he did, but they understand he's mentally ill. They see him as a friend. In January of 2022, outgoing Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, a neurologist by training, granted Vince a pardon. Because of lack of beds in a suitable psychiatric institution, Vince remains in a prison mental health facility. But he's dreaming about his release. He wants mellow mushroom pizza and to hug everyone he knows, his mom says. For Benjamin, who has become Vince's legal guardian, their journey together has offered profound lessons. Vince lost his family, he lost his mind, he lost his ability to be a doctor. His life crumbled so fast. I inherited the world he created. It's not hard to identify with his loss. I realize how much I have, and I am grateful. first-degree conviction and all related charges, including his being labeled an offender. Now, Mukante is taking this astounding journey and turning it into a different film, one with a happier ending, a documentary currently in production on Broadwater's life called Unlucky. After 40 years of trying to clear his name, Broadwater still feels shock. God believed in me, and an aunt who wrote to me every month, Broadwater says. That was always the inspiration and hope and strength I needed in prison. I could never give up. Broadwater was a 20-year-old Marine home caring for his sick father on the day Syracuse police charged him with assaulting Siebold inside the city's Thornton Park. The assault itself had occurred nearly 6 months earlier, but when Siebold happened to pass Broadwater on the street, she was sure he was the one and called the police, who swarmed the area and arrested him. When she was called to view a lineup of suspects, she identified the man standing next to Broadwater. Prosecutors, perhaps eager for a conviction, told Siebold the two men were friends, and they'd purposely appeared in the lineup together. At the trial, Siebold pointed to Broadwater as her assailant. The late Judge Walter Gorman sentenced him to 8.5 to 25 years. I was the only black person in the whole courtroom, says Broadwater, who spent more than 16 years in prison before his release on December 31st, 1998, 8 months before Lucky hit bookstore shelves. Mukante began to doubt Broadwater's guilt the first time he read Siebold's book, especially the lineup scene where she identified someone else as her attacker. Anyone who watches Law and Order knows that if a person cannot identify their assailant, it's the end of the case related to that assailant. You don't just say, well, we're gonna try you anyway, says Mukante, who was a lawyer and a journalist before becoming a filmmaker. The white woman said he's the black man who assaulted me, and with almost no procedural due process, he was sent to prison. His life was taken from him. He's a modern-day Emmett Till. After Broadwater's prison release, he was put on a New York offender registry, which destroyed many job prospects and personal relationships. It is hard when you want to show your love, but you're afraid to hug your nieces or aunties or sisters-in-law. He says he decided never to have children because he was concerned about the stigma of his conviction and how it might affect the kids. I don't have a lot of pictures of my family members with me in them. I guess they just didn't want to be seen with me. By the time Mukante met Broadwater and his wife in September 2021, he already believed in Broadwater's innocence. Watching him with Elizabeth made him even more certain. They were just the sweetest, cutest couple. He was very gallant and chivalrous, opening doors, holding her chairs, and things people don't do anymore, Mukante says. And I'm thinking, how in the world could this person be the monster described in Alice's book? I mean, I know people change over 40 years, but I don't think they change that much. When Mukante later asked Broadwater to sign a release form before filming his documentary, he unearthed another affirmation of his now friend's innocence. When Broadwater put pen to paper with his left hand, I remember Mukante got quiet and I said, "What's wrong?" recalls Broadwater. And he said, "I know you're innocent." When I asked him why, he said Siebold claimed the perpetrator was right-handed. Siebold shared her apology with Broadwater's attorney